an issue there.
I don't think that there has been evidence to that effect. I think that doctors give morphine, which is a pain relief, and it is reversible. There is no mechanism in New Zealand for doctors to give a lethal dose of drugs, and we need to be clear about the language we're using. In the bill, they talk about medication when it's a lethal drug overdose. It talks about assisted death. Most people in a Curia poll last year didn't know what that was. They thought it was stuff that's completely legal. Assisted suicide and euthanasia is what this law is seeking to change in the Crimes Act. I would put the challenge to David Seymour. How many wrongful deaths does it take for you to live with your conscience?
I put the challenge. You don't mind wrongful deaths if it's a doctor giving someone a little bit too much morphine.
No, that's
you
not
don't
true.
mind people writhing on plastic sheets, suffering to the bitter end.
I don't think you representing
all of
me
that
is particularly relevant here, David.
Well,
my compassion and desire for people to die with dignity comes from 25 years working in the palliative care sector as a patron and as somebody who's witnessed both of my parents die through very good palliative care. I ask you again, if you're so confident that your bill is going to deliver safely and always to people, how many deaths would you live with in your conscience? Because for me, one wrongful death under your permissive loose bill is one too many.
Then you support the status quo. You cannot support Martin
deaths, David? Don't evade the question.
You cannot support Martin Hames. Oh, well, obviously the answer is none. But you cannot accept
not what you said earlier.
Martin Hames.
No such thing as a perfect bill.
Well, that's true. There is no such thing as a perfect bill for tonight.
Of course I won't take it. And do you know why?
Because you don't
Because I don't
really
believe
care
that
about
your bill is diametrically opposed to what palliative care is all about. Palliative care seeks to care for people. Your bill seeks to kill people. There is no meeting of the ground here, David.
If we look at the evidence from overseas, what we find...
Palliative care needs to be... You were saying that I was interrupting you, so...
Let's let Maggie finish.
I'd like to return what I'm saying. So as we have a series of situations in New Zealand where there is not always equitable access to palliative care. That's why I put the bill together after extensive consultation with hospice and palliative people in New Zealand and internationally. That's what is required before the nuclear button is pushed to bring in euthanasia, which is permissive, which criteria will change because it's happened everywhere else in the world. The bill about enshrining access to palliative care is diametrically opposed to killing patients, which is precisely what David Seymour's bill is proposing.
Okay, let me put that to David.
Incorporate the provisions in her proposal.
I don't want to borrow your bill.
Into my bill.
It's awful.
But the fact is...
It again comes to that philosophical argument that someone has the right to choose. What is the issue with that if somebody wants that right?
Because their choice is not just confined to them. If people have a suicide, for example, or assisted suicide, the repercussions of that are felt throughout a community, throughout a family, because of the misery and upset. There's a thing at the moment called mature minors that's going on in Canada, where children are able to be euthanized without their parents' knowledge or consent, and the parents can find out afterwards.
But that is not...
The protocols... It will be. That's what Canada already has. So that is what is going to be. That is what is going to be ushered in.
That is not being proposed in this bill.
It will eventuate once the bill...
Well, that's the slippery slope argument. So let me...
Increases youth suicide.
So why is it so many submitters have indicated that their lives, as people who work in the area of suicide prevention, would be made so much harder? How do you tell an 18-year-old that it's okay for someone with disabilities to be assisted to die because their life isn't worth living?
Well, it's not okay.
Ministry of Health
that MaggieBarry is prepared to try and hijack an issue such as you advance your own agenda against my bill is disgraceful.
This bill is a disgrace and it will lead to more suicide, and that has been said by thousands and thousands of people who work in the sector who know much more about it than you do as a politician.
Well, they need to
and they are very, very fearful that this bill will certainly lead to increases in youth suicide and across the board. A spike in elder abuse, for example, where a lot of older people are being 2,000 reported cases a year, but about 70,000 New Zealanders are abused each year. The suicide spike for older men, for example, is very high. They need to be looked after and not coerced, and not to be told that psychological abuse, which does exist, means that, for example, you know, if you don't give me the mortgage on the house, Mum, you're not going to see the children, grandchildren. These are the sort of issues that we fight against.
On others. The evidence from around the world is that these bills work, and the ultimate proof of that is that no country that has had an assisted dying law, in many cases for up to 20 years, has gone back. The opponents need to pick.
Once you open the lid,
opponents need to pick a side,